Before delving into the rest of the report options, let's stop and look at creating our own custom report. You create all custom reports in a separate area. You can access this by clicking on Reports and then Create Reports. Before we do go there though, let's first talk about what is needed when we want to create a report. There are 4 steps to creating any report. The first step is to define what information we want to see on our report. The information we choose will appear as a column in our report. These columns are columns of information, so this step we will call columns. I want to create a report with catchword and the case number, and to do so I will choose these 2 columns then to be added to my report. The second step is the design step. How do we want this report to look? Do we want a header in the report? Do we want to add our company logo perhaps? Maybe we add in a page count in the footer and so on. The design step is exactly that, where you design your report. The third step is the criteria step. What information should I give the report to get the results I need? This step is best explained in an example. I want to create a client list report showing all cases for a client. This is then based on name number. So when the user runs my custom report, they need to provide a name number and a name type. These 2 fields are my criteria, and I set this in the criteria step. Another example is a statistics report that we need to run every month. This report gives us a list of all cases created during that month. So what will my criteria be? What do I need from the user to generate this report successfully? We said the results are based on a specific period, so dates. Which dates? The answer is a start date and an end date. The start date is the first of every month and the end date the last day of the month. Everything that was created between these 2 dates will be returned. When the user enters these dates, we will compare it with the creation date on the case. This is what we use the criteria step for. We define the criteria our users need to enter. The last step is to put all these bits together, to associate the different parts with one another. The first step, columns, and the second step, designs, are linked with one another. They depend on one another as both deal with what information we will see and how this is displayed. The third step is our criteria, which doesn't really have any effect on how the results appear, but rather define which results are returned. So this third step has nothing to do with the look and feel. While the column design are linked, the criteria is separate. In the fourth step, known as associate report, we need to associate our column design report with our criteria report. This will make a bit more sense once we show an example. Great, so let's take a look at the create report area. I will click on report and then create report. This window conforms to all the layouts we've seen before. First, we have our content area that is updated when we click on the page buttons here. Take a look at these pages. We just discussed each of these moments ago. First, we have our column area where we define what columns are to be shown in our report. Next, we have design where we define how the report will look. Then we have our criteria, which defines what we need to enter. And last, we have our associate report where we tie it all together. Let's create a new report. A good idea is to create your report in the order that we discussed. First column, then design, then criteria, and only then associate report. It's also a good idea to save on each page as you go through the process. The column page is quite easy to work with. Here we see all the column data that we can add to our report. To add a column, simply click on its equivalent tick box. I want my report to show case number and catchword, so I will click on these tick boxes. Take a look how it appears in my content area then. Take note how the columns are grouped under specific areas. All case data information is listed under the first block. We then have several additional blocks available to pull in various data into our report. I'm happy with my selection, so I'm going to click Save. I will call this Default Layout 1. Next, let's change the report look and feel. Click on Design. I'm still working with my report, even though we switched pages. I can see this by looking at the heading here where the report name is displayed. Let's change the report slightly. I will add in header text. First, pull down the header line here to increase the space in the header area. The header area already displays our column headings, which I will move down. While here, I will select both of these and mark the text to be bold in the general area to the right. I will add heading text by right-clicking, choosing New Control and then selecting Text. I will resize my new text block to span the complete page. Now I will replace that text with something more appropriate, and we do that here. Let's also increase the font to 20. I'm happy with my design, so I will click Save again. Now click on Criteria. Here we define our criteria. My criteria for this report will show all cases of a specific case type. First, the data type dropdown I will leave as is. I will choose case type in the data subtype dropdown here. What this means is that when a user generates this report, they then need to choose a case type from the value here. My criteria is done, so let's click Save. I will call this Cases per Case Type. So we've created all the different parts of the report, but now we need to put it together. Click on Associate Report. This page has three main areas. First, we have the column design reports listed here, and we can see the one we created is showing. Second, we have the criteria set listed here, and we can see our entry appears as well. The third area shows all the actual associated reports. Let's associate our design report with our criteria report. Click on the report in the design area and then choose the correct criteria report in the area below that. Now click Add. Our reports are now associated and appears as a single line in the association area. To run this report, select it and then click View. Our criteria window appears as expected. Remember that we created this earlier. Now choose a case type and click Run Report. Our report is then generated using the design we created, populated with the results from our criteria. Now the question you might have is, why is this the route we take to create reports? Why is the design part separate from the criteria part? The reason is simple. Splitting these two parts allows us to reuse a design we created. We'll use our report as an example. Let's say our users now want this very same report showing all cases for a case type, but we need to limit it to only a single country. So we need to add a second criteria line called country. We can of course just go and change our existing report, but we still may want to use this in future. Normally you would need to recreate everything from scratch. But because we split the design from the criteria, this isn't necessary. All we need to do is to create the criteria report and then associate it to the old design report. In my example, I've already created the case type report limited to one country. All I need to do is to associate this criteria with my design report. I have now two reports using the same design layout but with different criteria.